Welcome everyone to the Practical SQL Server HA show. Welcome back if you're joining back in, or if it's your first time joining in. Welcome to the Practical SQL Server HA show. And while the title says SQL Server, I share tips and tricks and hacks, insights from my own personal experiences working as a high availability and disaster recovery expert, not just on the Microsoft Data Platform solutions, but also high availability in disaster recovery in general. And instead of just focusing on the technical aspects, I focus on the non-technical aspects because as technical professionals, it's easy for us to get drawn into the nitty-gritty of the tech aspect of an HADR solution, not realizing that there are more important things like the people and the processes that are involved. So again, welcome. Make sure that you go back to some of the episodes. I've been doing this for quite a while now. I think this is about 2.5 years, I think, maybe. This week's episode, let me pop the title in the banner, HADR tasks in the beginning of the year. And I like taking advantage of the new year because it's a fresh new start. This is the time for most companies coming out of the change freeze. Last month of the year typically is the change freeze, and everything that needs to be done on the systems, whether it's configuration change, upgrade, migration, all of these stuff, are put on hold. So there's no major change in existing systems. And then come the new year is when, I don't want to say all hell breaks loose, but this is the time when you can start making modifications, continue on from where you left off before the change freeze. And interestingly, the new year is also an opportunity for you to start looking at some of the things that you can improve within your system. Improve, maybe do a little bit of a housekeeping, maybe do a little bit of reviewing or do an assessment. Because, well, you know how it is when the new year starts, people start making New Year's resolutions. This is also the time when people would want to go back to the gym with fitness goals and other types of goals. Let's throw in professional goals there in the mix, and specifically for your high availability and disaster recovery solutions. Plus, you want to plan ahead of time on some of the things that you want to do so that come the end of the year, or I don't know how your performance review looks like, you already have something in place to talk to your boss about some of the things that you accomplished within the year, so that again, by the time the performance review comes, you have a checklist full of this is what I did, and you don't guess what you've done. And again, this is an opportunity for you to take stock of the things that you can plan, again, for you professionally, personally, not just within the context of HADR, but again, for your personal growth, for your talking points to your boss. And I want to take advantage of also some of the things that you've done in the previous year. We're looking at 2024, which is, I have no idea when the next version of SQL Server is going to come out, but also taking advantage of what's coming up in the next version, next release. Although no clue after no longer being a Microsoft MVP, I have no idea what's coming out in the pipeline for Microsoft as far as SQL Server is concerned. But again, taking stock of all the possibilities and all the things that you can do throughout the year, and planning it is key. So let's get down to business. Grab your pen and paper. And again, I'm still old school like that. Grab your pen and paper. Here are tasks that you can start planning for and do throughout the year as you're starting off the new year. First one, right? First one, and this is a little bit controversial because I've seen so many environments where they have a solution in place, and most people have this false sense of security thinking that their solution actually works. So first thing in the list of tasks that you can do in the beginning of the year, test your solutions. I know what you're thinking. What? That's simple. Yes, test your solutions. You may have heard me say in the past, if you've been following some of the episodes or even some of the articles that I've written online, blog posts, even online presentations, I do not believe in backups. I do not believe in backups, and that's mainly because backups create a false sense of security. I have been bitten by this, not me personally, but my clients, where they would ask me to do something like fix a corrupted page, or restore a series of corrupted pages, or restore from the latest backup, not realizing that the backups actually are corrupted. I remember a case that I worked on several years ago. I was doing an assessment of their entire SQL Server instance, and while I was checking for potential issues, I happened to see a corruption error in the SQL Server error log. Corruption error. Um, no big deal. I've seen those cases in the past, so no big deal. First thing that I asked was, do you have backups? And them being on Enterprise Edition, again, no big deal. They said, yes, we do have backups. I requested for the latest full in a sequence of a series of transaction log backups. Check the backups. They're corrupted, meaning they have a copy of the corrupted database. Okay. I asked for the day, 2 days old worth of backups. Same thing. Contain a copy of the corrupted database. 1 week old, contain a copy of the corrupted database. 1 month old. And we went back up until like 6 or 7 months of having a copy of the corrupted database in their backups. And I told them, look, we are going beyond what we have right now, because again, we're looking at both the recovery point and recovery time objectives, but we are going beyond that time when we can play around with your backups and restore to the latest copy, right? And I said, my hands are tied. I can fix this, but it may cause your database to be officially unsupported. And that's not something that I want for the customer, because for one, even if the data has been recovered, even if everything was fixed, the state of the database is officially unsupported. And so I told them, look, this is no longer a technical conversation, but rather a legal conversation, meaning I cannot help you, even if I can do the work. Open a case with Microsoft, ask them to help you fix the corrupted page and restore as much data as they possibly can. My hands are tied. So backups create a false sense of security. You know how it is? You create either a database maintenance plan where it's taking regular backups, or all a Halangren scripts where you can still automate and have like a smart way of doing your backups. You may have enterprise backup solution like Veeam, for instance, or third-party backup plugins for your SQL Server database, and then the enterprise backup engineers are the ones taking care of it. But how sure are you that your backups actually work? How sure are you that your backups actually work? And that's one of the reasons I say I'm not a big believer of backups. Controversial, yes. I do believe in successfully making sure by testing whether or not your backups work. That's the only way. And this is twofold, though, other than the fact that you're checking whether or not your backups work, because again, the last thing you want is, I need a backup, and then the backups don't work, right? So it's twofold. One, you're checking, validating, verifying, testing whether or not your backup actually works. So you restore, check, look at the data, well and good, right? On the flip side, you're also checking whether or not you still meet your recovery time objective. We set up schedules for database backups, whether it's a combination of full, differential, or log. Maybe it's just full and log. Maybe it's full, partial backups with log. But you set up your database backups for a reason, and that is, primary reason, you want to protect your data. You want to be able to restore to a point in time, so covering that recovery point objective. But how sure are you that when you do restore, that you're meeting your recovery time objective? Because again, a database that's 1 terabyte might be faster, depending on your storage subsystem and everything else, will take much faster than restoring a 10 terabyte size database. So test your solutions, whether it's native SQL Server database backups, all the Hallengren scripts, or you're using third-party backups like Veeam, for instance, where you have a SQL Server, a SQL agent for Veeam, or a data protection manager. Restore, test it, right? And not just the backups though. Test your HA solutions as well. So if you have an availability group, test the failover time. Was that the same thing that you expected when you built your AG? Test your failover time for failover clustering, for database mirroring if you're still using database mirroring. Test your DR solutions if you're using availability groups for your DR strategy, an asynchronous replica on your secondary database, on your DR data center. Test whether or not the failover is what you expect it to as far as recovery time objective. Or what are the things that could affect the failover onto a different data center, right? Same thing with log shipping, or whether you're implementing some more complex architecture like a distributed availability groups. Test, right? Have you automated a process? There's so many things that you can factor in to testing your solutions. And the thing about this is most of the time we do a set and forget, meaning database maintenance plan, backups, log shipping, all types of HADR solution in place. We set it and then we forget because it's automated. SQL Server Agent has this automatic scheduling, and you simply run the jobs and then you forget because it works, right? And that's why I said backups create a false sense of security because it's happening in the background. You think it's happening in the background because your SQL Server Agent jobs will tell you successful, right? Even when you're using third-party solutions like Veeam or Data Protection Manager, you may think, especially with those cases where you're not actually seeing anything, but rather your enterprise backup admins are the ones who have access to the management console and the reporting, they may think everything's fine. All greens on the dashboard, we're all good. So we have a tendency to rely on this thing because it's a set and forget thing until a real disaster strikes, until we need to invoke DR or we need to restore from backup. So test, simple as it may sound, test your solutions, right? And again, it's interesting to see what is happening in the field, what customers are doing. I remember building an HA and a DR strategy. It's a failover clustered instance on the production data center and a failover clustered instance in the DR data center. I wrote the document on how to build the entire infrastructure from start to finish. I wrote the DR document so that the operational engineers can take that document, run through it, and they could initiate or invoke failover. We did it once. 3 years later, never done it again. And again, we have this thing where, yeah, we need to comply with regulation or regulatory requirements or compliance requirements. So yes, let's come up with a DR solution. Let's come up with a DR strategy. Let's put it on a document, but everything looks good on paper. Until you now have to invoke the DR strategy. So again, test. I cannot overemphasize the fact that you need to test. Okay, don't be caught off guard with realizing when a real disaster strikes, your solutions don't work. That's the first one. Yeah, I've seen so many of these, and it's interesting when I tell my customers test your solutions, they would come up with so many reasons why it is impossible to test their solutions. We don't have disk space, we don't have the license, we don't have additional resources, we don't have compute resources, oh, the service too big. There's so many excuses and reasons why they're not testing. Well, the only thing I can think of is then why do we have it in the first place if you're not going to test it, right? So test. Again, I will overemphasize the fact that a lot of people are not testing their solutions. Make sure you're not one of those. That's the first one. The second one, I combined these two into one because most of the time it is an exercise worth doing as a group. Some people would break it down into multiple sections for project management purposes, for resource management purposes. The way I look at it is I don't want to be repeating work, so might as well do it all in the same time. If you can plan well for it, it's a complete game changer, well, a time saver rather. Number two is modernization and consolidation. It's you can start planning ahead of time, especially in the early weeks of the new year, on how you can modernize and consolidate. And modernize meaning you can upgrade to a later version, a later supported version of Windows and SQL Server 2022 if you can. Modern version of, or supported version, latest supported version of your hardware if you're running on premises, HPE, Lenovo, whatever hardware you have if you're running on bare metal. Modernization if you're running VMware and you're thinking of moving to later version. Again, for mostly for support purposes, if you're running a specific version of your third-party HA solutions, modernize. Part of that is upgrade. And a lot of people would have this way of thinking, wait, licensing is a big thing. You need to plan for modernizing in a way that would not shock your CFO when it comes to licensing costs. And that's why I threw in consolidation in there. I've seen so many cases where there's database sprawl or SQL Server instance sprawl, where you have dozens of SQL Server instances that sometimes you're not even aware of. And then when you start doing an inventory of what is available out in the on your network, then you start to realize there's a SQL Server instance on someone else's desktop computer that now is becoming mission critical. And so, again, this is where it's not just enough to modernize, because you start to look into how much is this going to cost when you upgrade to a later version, and what kind of licensing we're going to be looking at. So why not just consolidate? So instead of having like 24 SQL Server instances, you might want to consolidate them into a more powerful compute resource, like a more powerful bare metal machine. And then you start moving databases into this, so it makes the modernization exercise worthwhile from a cost perspective, as well as from an operations and management perspective as well. Although the mistake that I've seen many people do is the fact that when they do consolidate, is they ignore that there is a thing called recovery point and recovery time objective. Meaning you don't put all your eggs in one basket, if you would like to think it that way. You don't put your mission critical databases and your non-mission critical databases in a single instance. Or talking about consolidation, where you want to virtualize everything, putting everything on a single host, which kind of defeats the purpose. Why would you have an existing HA solution running on a virtualization platform and everything's running on a single host? It becomes a single point of failure. So modernization coupled with consolidation is something that you can start planning for in the year. And again, I started seeing this happen last year, 2023, when customers started moving away from older versions of SQL Server to newer versions, not necessarily 2022, but you need to start looking at whether or not your apps are supported on 2022 or whatever latest or greatest version. Not, again, I wish I'd get some kickbacks out of recommitting Microsoft licenses. I don't. But you need to start looking into supportability, making sure that you're protected. A lot of my customers started moving away from Windows Server 2012, mainly because it's outside, it's no longer within the scope of even extended support. So as far as security and compliance and regulation are concerned, they're not covered. So beyond just looking at modernization, again, thinking about the upgrade cost, licensing cost, start consolidating. And that's why I said this is a huge project. in and of itself. So you can start planning way ahead of time on how you can migrate to the latest and the greatest, or the latest and the greatest supported version of your app, because you also don't want to be upgrading to a version that your app vendors don't support. Kind of tricky. So it's a balance, right? Microsoft support plus third-party app vendor support is what you're trying to achieve. Plus consolidating to make sure that you're not just spending money on licensing, because when you start to think about it, licensing costs can eat up a lot of your IT budget. So even looking at consolidating to reduce the licensing cost is the thing. So second one is modernization and consolidation. Whether it's databases in a single instance or multiple instances in a physical machine where you're running multiple VMs, totally up to you. But making sure that as you're going through the modernization and consolidation project, you'll still be keeping recovery time objectives, and SLAs in mind, right? Again, you don't want mission critical databases and non-mission critical databases in a single solution. Then your non-mission critical databases are causing issues to your mission critical databases. So that's the second one. Third one, love this one, task automation. Task automation. Take stock of all the things that you do repetitively. And I don't know, maybe it's just me. I'm lazy, but I don't want to say always, but every time I do something, I evaluate whether or not this is something that I'm going to be doing twice, 3 times, or more. Or yeah, more, because if I'm only going to do it 3 times, it doesn't make sense for me to automate it. Although the practice of me automating something, even if I'm only going to be doing it twice or 3 times, helps me become a better scripter, helps me improve my skills in automation. But again, take stock, do a quick review of the things that you will be doing as part of your HADR solutions. For instance, didn't I say restoring your backups and testing them, whether or not they work? You can automate that. You can automate the process of spinning up a VM, installing SQL Server, attaching a virtual hard drive, restoring backups, running CheckDB, reading the SQL Server error log as part of it, sending an email. All while having your morning coffee, right? That's one thing. Some people would say, we don't have time to do this. Automation. If you can identify the tasks that you can start automating, it will free up a ton of your time. Like I said, that simple task I mentioned in item number 1, testing your solutions. Well, what am I going to do when I'm testing my solutions? I'm going to spin up a VM. I'm going to copy the backup there. I'm going to attach a virtual hard drive if I don't have enough space. I would restore from backup, run CheckDB, read if I have some errors in my SQL Server error log as a side effect of me restoring, running CheckDB, and report on it. You can break down the steps. And as you're breaking down the steps, look and see how you can automate it. You would free up so much of your, I'm just saying, because again, this is one of the things that I did when I was working as a data center engineer. Man, it's been what, more than 15 years now. Yeah, almost, no, more than 15 years. This is what I did. I was part of a 5-person engineering team, managing about 400 plus Windows servers, and we barely worked. And I mean, literally, we barely were on the computer doing work. I spent most of my time doing whiteboard sessions with pen and paper, writing down the things that I needed to do, what are repetitive tasks that I need to keep doing, and then automate it. Because once it's automated, all I have to do now is look at the results of the jobs being automated or the tasks being automated and whether or not the jobs are breaking. So even though we were managing 400 plus servers with a small team of 5, we were barely doing anything. I spend most of my time working on projects that have nothing to do with operations. nothing to do with SQL Server even. But this is the power of automation. You can start with testing. Again, point number one, testing your solutions. Start with that. Restoring your backups. How would you, if let's say somebody asks, can you restore this backup for me? How would you do that manually? And then start writing scripts on how you can automate the entire process. I mentioned reviewing your log, SQL Server error log output whenever you're running CheckDB. And again, dump it all in that automation, because you're not doing anything anyway. You're not doing anything anyway. So why not just dump everything? That way, at the end of the entire automations job, if you want to automate this and put it on a job, you have done everything. Done a DR test, which involves restoring from backup. Done a consistency check, meaning after restoring from backups, you're running CheckDB and reading the output and sending you an email. So even if you're out for lunch and the job finished, you would be notified whether or not something went wrong. Look at items in your to-do list. Look at repetitive issues in your ticketing system. What are repetitive issues that you can fix now, either through automation or just looking at what the root cause is and finally fixing the problem so that it doesn't happen again? Look at repetitive issues or repetitive tasks that you can start automating so that you can free up most of your time. Instead of working 16-hour days and not getting enough sleep because you're getting woken up because of some issues, automate. Trust me, you are going to accomplish more than 5 engineers combined, yet not having to work 5 times more. I found out about this. I am sold. It's one of the reasons I use VB Script from 15, 20 years ago. I still use PowerShell scripting on Windows, even on Linux with PowerShell Core, and using Bash on Linux. It makes life easy. Plus, again, come performance review, I could tell my boss, these are all the things that I've done. And then he would start thinking about, hey, this guy's cool. He did all of these things. But what he doesn't realize is I actually automated all of these things. That's working smart and not necessarily working hard. I would rather spend more time on doing things that I love rather than doing the boring, monotonous, repetitive tasks that need to be done anyway. So why not automate them, right? So HADR tasks, start planning for this for the entire year. Again, not just for your existing HADR solution to improve operational efficiency, to make sure that you're meeting your recovery point, recovery time objectives, and service level agreements, but also professionally and personally. Planning whatever it is that you need to do throughout the entire year. You kind of have a sense of, hey, these are all the things. And by the way, we're not even looking at unexpected projects. Maybe a new app is getting deployed, and they, the business unit needs HA solution. We're not even including that in the mix, but you're already stacking up, writing down all of the things that you can do throughout the year in order to have that conversation with your boss and say, hey, I've done all of these things, right? So test your solutions, right? Testing your solutions, making sure that they actually work, and making sure that they're meeting both your recovery point and recovery time objectives and SLAs. Modernize and consolidate. Plan upgrading and migrating your old versions of Windows and SQL Server. Plan for consolidation, because upgrades are expensive, especially if you're coming from standard edition. This is one of the things that my customers struggled with, coming from SQL Server 2008, where they were using database mirroring, and now they want to move to 2012 or higher, and they want to leverage always-on availability groups. But then you have to be on Enterprise Edition or basic AG in 2016, but it's cumbersome. So plan for migration and modernization and consolidation, not just from a SQL Server point of view, but the entire stack, hardware, third-party solutions for your backups, middleware, anything that this is part of making sure that you're meeting your HADR goals. And number 3, task automation. Automate repetitive, monotonous, boring tasks that you need to do when it comes to your HADR solutions. That way you don't have to do it. I mean, you don't have to as you. They need to be done anyway, right? Somebody needs to do it. I don't want to do it, but I still need to do it. So why not delegate that to a computer by writing a script and letting a computer do your work? Again, working smart, not necessarily hard. Although the investment upfront, when you're writing scripts for automation, that would take some time. And then testing out whether your scripts work. Of course, you don't want to be deploying automation scripts and not properly testing them, because it is going to make life even worse. Yeah, I remember trying to deploy scripts that wiped out all of my backups, not realizing that I was deploying in production or testing in production, not in dev or UAT. So again, plan for that, making sure that you're not causing more issues, right? Things that you can do in the beginning of the year, or start planning in the beginning of the year, and then you can make recommendations accordingly. And I say accordingly because, again, priorities take precedence depending on budget constraints, resource constraints, and what your boss has to say. So at least you have something. So when the time comes that they ask for, hey, what do you have planned for the year? You have a list. You have a list. And it doesn't have to be detailed. Just plan for it. Because again, you're not a project manager, unless of course you want to be a project manager. It doesn't have to be as detailed or to the dot as step number 1. This is who's supposed to be doing this. These are the people who are who I need to talk to. This is what I need to do. It doesn't have to be as detailed as that. You can, but it doesn't have to be. You start with a high level because you're still in the planning stage. And once you're ready for this, and like for instance, the modernization and consolidation projects, you might want to bring in a project manager to help you out to put in more details in that high level plan, right? So that's about it for this episode of the Practical SQL Server HADR show. Make sure to start planning ahead of time so you can prepare ahead of time, right? If you need to collect some of the scripts that you've used in the past projects, in previous jobs as well, this is the time for it. Now that you have, kind of like an overview of what you expect to be doing within the year, right? Again, that's about it for this episode of the Practical SQL Server HADR show. Tune in again next week for another episode. And again, I just like taking advantage of first few weeks of the new year and making sure that you are setting yourself up for success throughout the year, so that when that performance review comes, that conversation that sometimes takes forever, when you're having that conversation with your boss, you have talking points. Hey, these are the things that I did, right? So planning ahead, getting yourself ready so that by that time comes, you can thank your boss for an upcoming promotion or a salary increase because you've been proactive with the tasks that you need to do. All right. If you need any help, and this is something, again, I get brought in to do consulting work on some of these things. These are the very things that I do for them. I would we would get into a conversation, looking at what their goals are. Based on that, we come up with an action plan, a step-by-step strategy on how to achieve that goal. So maybe modernization and consolidation. We'll look at that, and if I can help, I will. If not, I will steer you in a direction that would help serve you best. I remember one potential client. They did not eventually become a client, but they came to me, and one of the things that they wanted to do was implement high availability solutions with SQL Server on Linux. They were a top to bottom Linux shop, and I told them, how many people on your team know availability groups? Yes, crickets, nobody. And they're taking care of SQL Server, but they don't know AGs. Second question got them to rethink their strategy. How many people on your team know Linux Pacemaker? If that's the strategy that they wanted to move forward with, crickets. So even then, I told them, don't. If you don't have anybody on your team who knows about the technology, the stack, the platform, forget about it. Sure, you need HA, but if you don't have the right people, and if you don't know how the technology stack works, it you're just simply shooting yourself in the foot. So again, use, that was kind of like a side story behind that. Use that link on the screen. Schedule a strategy session. Let's have that conversation. And I look forward to hearing from you and how I can help you achieve your goals when it comes to implementing high availability and disaster recovery solutions. All right. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'll see you again in the next episode.